the fact that the TfL knows it has an unsafe system, I was shocked. You have all these incidents and there's no official publication that shows how many people are killed or seriously injured. When this data is published, I mean, come on, the press will be all over this like a rash. London is the worst performer of his peers compared to other cities around the world. The bus drivers are effectively the forgotten workers of the UK labour movement. I was aware that buses have priority over vehicles, but I wasn't aware that they have priority over human lives and livelihoods.
As part of his Vision Zero programme, the Mayor of London is hoping that no one is killed or seriously injured on a bus in London by 2030. Unfortunately for him, progress on this has been slow, to put it kindly, since he took office. With us in the studio today for a special episode of the London Brief is someone who was involved in a collision himself, but has gone on to become a leading bus safety campaigner. Thomas Kearney, welcome to the London Brief.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me here. I'm very grateful for your time, and I'm grateful to be able to speak to the audience who may or may not be watching.
Absolutely. Tom, can you tell us about your own experience with bus safety, and I guess how maybe that incident prompted your own 16-year, as you say, campaign?
On the 18th of December 2009, as I was on Oxford Street, a bendy bus running a red light, the mirror hit the back of my head, threw me into the side of the bus, cracked my head open, popped both my lungs, and deposited me 10 feet down the road in a near-death coma. I spent the Christmas and summer and New Year's of 2009 and 2010 in a coma, only to wake up in 2010, probably the second week of 2010. Waking up from a coma is not like waking up from a sleep. It's a period of I would say, it's a period of rebooting that takes some time. So I think the first date I remember with any degree of precision is the 14th of January. So from the 18th of December until the 14th of January, I remember because a little known fact, when you're in a coma, you can hear. And the nurses told my wife to bring in family and friends to talk to me. And since my family flew out from the States to talk to me because they told I was near death, I probably should do that. So I heard my family speak to me. I heard my mother or my father crying. I heard my brother and sister talk to me as well. And they told me I was in a coma. And as a result, I was not, my internal narrative was not interrupted. It's interpreted in a different way. It was kind of a semi-dream state, I guess you'd say. But I was aware that something had happened to me because the first question I asked when I did wake up was, where are my boys? I had two sons. I still have two sons. At the time, they were 7 and 11, and I didn't hear their voices at all. And the doctor said that it probably wouldn't be a good idea to bring them into the hospital to see their father in intensive care. And I was pretty beat up. I had a trachea tube because I was breathing through a trachea tube because both my lungs had been popped, and also I'd had brain bleed, brain hemorrhage. So it was a pretty substantial. When my sons finally did visit me the third week of January, they came in, and I remember looking at them and looking at me. I'd lost a lot of weight, obviously, because I'd been, which isn't a bad thing. I'd lost a lot of weight, and my hair was a lot longer. So they actually had a moment of saying, "Is this Dad?" But it was fine. But suffice to say, it was my being critically injured, and then having the fortunate, basically having the Royal London Hospital save my life in brain, allowed me to start asking questions. I had lived in London at that point for 12 years. I've been working in South Africa primarily, so they drive on the wrong side of the road there too. So it's not an American looking the wrong way. And also, my friends and family knew me as someone. I'd owned a car, had a UK driver's license, so people knew me as an incredibly safe driver, but also an incredibly safe road walker. I used to go swimming at a place that was across from my office, and I always insisted on using the signaled route of the crossing. I would never jaywalk, as they say in the States, because I insisted on doing it the right way. I would walk my sons to school as well. So I was very familiar with the way that drivers were in London. Not necessarily buses, but drivers generally in London, also driving around London. And also, when you drive a car in London, you give headway to the bus. You give way to the bus. That's not the highway code as such. That is just normal, good behavior. And I was taught that way to drive. So I was aware that buses have priority over vehicles, but I wasn't aware that they have priority over human lives and livelihoods as they did. Now, like I said, I come from industry, heavy industry, and I've been in industries and certainly been directors of companies where fatal accidents happen and where fatal incidents happen. And I know for a fact regulatory authorities in the countries where these things happened, if directors of the company were aware of the safety problems and did not take measures to mitigate them, then they would go to jail. So I had a keen sense of how companies and contractors are supposed to behave when there's been a fatal incident on their site. So I was probably the worst person for TfL to have critically injured because I had a keen sense of how companies and contractors are supposed to behave. And so what the big signal indicator for me, the first alarm bell, was the fact that I never heard from the police. I never heard from TfL. I never heard from the bus operator Arriva. Nothing. Zero. I thought that was peculiar. You could be critically injured on Europe's largest city on its busiest shopping street just before Christmas, and the entities that are directly involved in your family's misery, zero interest what happened. I thought that was peculiar. And while I was being fed through a stomach tube in bed, that's 2 hours a pop every day, so you're stuck in bed a lot. Had my laptop, I'd start searching, and there are lots of stories about people being hit by buses, regular stories, over years. But then I said, well, this should be pretty easy. I'll just get the data and then start figuring out what's going on in terms of I was approaching it like as a CEO of a company, which I was at the time, which is we should look at the data. We should see where these things were happening, see if there's some patterns, see if there's systemic issues involved. And there was zero data. I was shocked that you have all these incidents and there is no official publication that shows how many people are killed or seriously injured. I was particularly into Oxford Street, but I was more interested also in the broader issue of London. So just as it happens, in February 2010, I was still in the hospital, teaching myself how to eat and drink through my mouth again, which is I've managed to do. Victoria Borwick had led a London Assembly investigation called Streets Ahead, reducing collisions on Oxford Street. And figure 3 in that popped out of me like it popped out of me. It was a great event. I was sitting with a stomach tube in me thinking, oh my God, eureka. It showed 2,000 people injured from bus collisions on Oxford Street over a 10-year period. So I knew TfL, and it said source, TfL. So I knew TfL had the data. They just weren't publishing it. So I said, note to self, get a hold of Victoria Borwick. So 10 years ago today, when I was recovering, I contacted Victoria Borwick, and she agreed to meet with me on Oxford Street where I was hit. And I thought, first I was touched by that. This is a London Assembly member. I'm not in her constituency. Anything, she doesn't know me from Adam. And she said, yes, I'm going to meet you where you were hit. And we're going to walk down Oxford Street and talk about this. And I met her and we talked about it. And then she said, look, I can't help you if you have a case and stuff. And I said, look, I was paid when I was in a coma. I didn't lose my job. I went back to work. I still have my job. You know, I'm okay materially. I can work again. I'm physically, I didn't even file a claim. I didn't file a case. The police said there was no CCTV evidence from the bus, no CCTV evidence from the overhead cameras on Oxford Street. There was no evidence anywhere. And I said, so, you know, I know enough about business and I know enough about life when the dice are, stacked against you, don't waste your time on it. Also, I recognize as well, since I didn't suffer any financial loss, since I didn't suffer any physical loss or mental loss, I couldn't really claim anything as such. And more importantly, even if I did file a claim, it wouldn't be worth me getting out of bed for. Sorry. It's just not, it's not worth it. So, but I realized this is not the case with a lot of people. But for me at the time, for a series of circumstances, I said, my time is much better spent, first of all, getting back to work and working again and getting back to my life. But then secondly, looking at this issue as effectively a resident or a citizen. And
so just to bring that forward to now, what do you make of TfL's approach to investigating bus crashes as of 2026?
They don't. They don't investigate, period. That they do not investigate bus crashes. They have the bus operator do that. They don't do that at all. It is the only mass transport system that I know of where there's no independent investigation of bus crashes. It's crazy. I mean, the rail has the Rail Accident Investigation Bureau. Air has the AAIB, and maritime has MAIB. Bus transport in the United Kingdom, which compared to its peers, its OECD peers, it showed it had the highest number of pedestrian deaths in 2025 compared to its OECD peers. So
that's other cities around the world, right?
Yeah,
other key cities, yeah.
It's other countries around the world. The UK was London has, according to the International Bus Benchmarking Group, if you look year after year, it places in the lowest tier for safety, for collisions, and also for pedestrian fatals. In fact, TfL this year was asked to reproduce some horrific time series data showing that they, year after year, placed in the bottom quartile for safety for pedestrian deaths.
How do you think a bus accident investigation branch would address those issues and improve our record?
Like I said, there are plenty of models that exist in this country. It's not for me as a private citizen to give ideas how these policies work. There are plenty of models. TfL has how many people that are paid over £100,000 a year. They have a lot of brains that are paying a lot of money for. It strikes me, if we have systems in place in other industries, mass transport industries like rail, like air, like maritime, this is a simple model to use. Now, this has been asked of the minister, Peter Hendy, in September 2024 by Lord Hampton. And he responded that and I think erroneously, which is a shock considering he's the minister, said there were already independent investigations done by DVSA, which is not, these aren't the same thing. These are what RIB, MIB, and AIB look for are systemic causes, possible systemic causes to incidents that try to prevent them. The whole RIB structure was built after the Paddington crash with a whole series of systemic issues. Now we know, and what thankfully MyLondon is putting its attention to, you've identified systemic issues in the system. And this is something I've been focusing on for 16 years. One was getting the data published. That was the most important thing. So TfL, to its credit, and only after campaigning, in 2014 became the first and probably only public local transport authority that publishes its bus safety casualty data every quarter. And now as a result, we have substantial data, quarterly data that shows this. When I first decided to campaign on this issue, I thought, oh, when this data is published, I mean, come on, the press will be all over this like a rash. And public outcry will be that, gosh, so many collisions. And, as a result of the data, I mean, I probably know more about this than anyone else in the country, which is a shame because there should be 200 people at TfL like me working. And I never want to work for TfL for that reason. But if you look, London is the worst performer of its peers compared to other cities around the world. It is also, UK is the worst performer, one of the worst performers of the OECD countries based on 2025 data. But if you look at the basic figures, since I was nearly killed on the 18th of December, 2009, 278 people have died from preventable safety incidents. Of that number, I include 195 from bus crashes or falling down on buses. I include 7 who died in the Croydon tram crash. Why? Because that was set up by the bus people. It was basically a train that was run like a bus. And lastly, the 76 bus drivers that died from COVID in 20 and 21 and 22. Because that, again, is the systemic issues that you're seeing today and reporting about. No place to go to the bathroom, fatigue, and those stress, all those things contributed, I believe, to creating a safety environment in which bus drivers were much more susceptible to the risks of COVID. And more importantly, they had the highest rate of any industrial sector in the United Kingdom based on as higher than doctors, higher than nurses. It's shocking to think that London bus drivers were the most susceptible. And there's a reason for that, because as a workforce, they were weakened by the conditions in which they worked. This is the 21st century United Kingdom, And my view is that bus drivers are effectively the forgotten workers of the UK labour movement, not just by the press, not just by local authorities, but the UK labour movement has forgotten the conditions these people work in.
And if we move on to the plight of London bus drivers, obviously MyLondon has a Back Our Bus Drivers campaign. We're seeking, and obviously thanks to campaigners like you, seeking to hold TfL to account to make conditions better for bus drivers. I guess at the moment, how much do you blame bus safety issues and the dangers of collisions and deaths on buses on the kind of the fatigue, the stress that is caused by bus driver conditions?
You said the word blame. It's an interesting word. What the Cullen inquiry to the Paddington crash, Ladbroke Grove officially, the Paddington crash, discovered was that a culture of blame existed in the rail industry. And the rail industry prior to Ladbroke Grove had an incredibly bad safety record relative to its European peers, but also you lose 60, 70 people a year through incidents falling out of doors, not just crashes. Crashes were bad, but there were all these incremental safety incidents where people were basically marginal safety incidents. They weren't big enough to hit the radar screen like bus crashes, but incrementally they would add up. And that ended after I would say ended. It dampened dramatically after Cullen. So the idea of creating a just culture, a safety culture, a just safety culture instead of a blame culture. And the blame starts when the bus stops with the United Kingdom, or certainly United Kingdom, and definitely in London. And the blame culture erodes confidence of bus drivers in the ability to report. If you have so many bus drivers reporting with blanked faces and blank names and pseudonyms, I don't know any industry that I've worked in where people would be persecuted for revealing known safety concerns. Sharon Graham said something very interesting when she spoke in that bus crash of an interview she did on
This is
ITV.
the Union Secretary.
Yes. She said something very interesting, which was, in these unsafe conditions, we as a union are required to withdraw labor. I agree with her, but I would throw that question out to bus company managing directors. These are known unsafe conditions. They are supplying labor knowing those conditions exist. Aren't they under some obligation to protect their workforce as well? And the question that people should not be asking is, why isn't Unite doing anything? But more importantly, why are TfL, the contractor, and the managing director of the bus companies not taking action to cure some of these simple, as Sharon Graham said, no-brainer problems? Toilets, schedules. This is not rocket science. These are known conditions. The rail industry deals with these. They dealt with them after the Ladbroke Grove. The bus industry has done none of this. I'm going to read you, there were two incidents, at least two, I would say, landmark points in my campaigning that I felt these were lost opportunities. But the fact that the TfL knows it has an unsafe system. It knows it has a system that not only needs change, it knows what it needs to do. And I would argue the only single word is bus contracts. You have a system, think about this. The bus operation, London's bus operation, functions on one single performance metric. That's the excess waiting time or performance. It's basically timeliness, reliability of buses. We know, as we hear the minister say incessantly, reliability is the only reason why people take buses. Fine. Buses should be reliable. I guess they should be fast. They should be clean. But that should not come at the cost of human lives and human livelihoods. And it does. And think about this. If you have a system, an industrial system, overlaid on a public space and on public rights of way, shared, and has single performance metric that rewards people that participate in it, that's based on time, you're going to effectively bully other people in the way. You're going to put the timeliness of that operation, the reliability, you're going to put that over the fact that other people use the same paths as you. And this is what we see so many collisions, 85 collisions per day. We see 3 people per day. This is the average over the last 10 years. 3 people per day sent to hospital. 3 people, it's 1,000 people a year sent to hospital from crashes. We see 85 per day. The cost to the system is incredibly high. People always talk about how cheap and reliable the bus is. It's cheap and reliable because we're paying for it. We're paying it through the NHS. We're paying it through congestion on the roads. We're paying it by money for involving the police and the ambulance services. We're paying for this. And I don't think it's right that human lives and livelihoods should subsidize someone's bus journey. End of.
And you mentioned there about just general bus collisions and how the number you cited there is 86 a day, and data we've seen as well suggests that bus collisions have pretty much remained the same. They've remained high.
No. This is where you have to do the math. Bus numbers are down. Bus miles are down. They're not the same. It's 11% increase.
Yeah, crashes per passenger have remained consistent or increased.
Passenger, it's not passengers, it's vehicle. Passenger makes no difference. The number of people, passenger miles, this is where I believe the bus industry, it's propaganda. If you think about it, a passenger mile means every mile a bus does is times 80. And you have a giant number that you divide by, and it becomes a 0.006. It's not passenger miles that are important. The people that are getting killed by buses aren't passengers. In that regard, the UK has a very safe bus system. It's people outside the bus that are being hit. It's a shared system. You have to get out of I appreciate that buses carry a lot of passengers, but they did their right to a safe, cheap journey, a fast and cheap, convenient journey does not earn them the right to take people's lives. Now you can tell me, no, we're going to have an efficient bus system, and that's going to cost, let's say, 1 death every 3 weeks, which is basically the average. Tell me that. Make that policy and announce that to the public. And I'd say, I'm done. We're done. That's fine. You're just going to kill people and you're happy with it. But you can't do that. You have to make I would say the United Kingdom politicians have to make a big deal out of the fact that no, safety is first. Safety isn't first. The mayor confirmed that when he said that no bus driver should have to drive a hot bus, and then went out and bus drivers acted on that and then found themselves penalized. So the mayor knows that the contracts he has in place, the contracts he enforces, the contracts on buses that have Mayor of London on them, he knows that. He knows that they're going to kill and injure people every day. And if he does not take action on that, that makes him culpable. Now,
just on that, in terms of his vision to achieve Vision Zero by 2030.
I love the idea.
How does he achieve this? We talked about systemic issue here.
Okay,
how can we realistically get to a point?
I want to correct you on one thing. It's not no deaths and injuries by 2030. It's no deaths by 2030. It's no injuries by 2041, I think. So, but it's no deaths by buses.
Okay, how does he achieve that?
He doesn't. He's not going to. It's clear he's not going to. He cannot achieve that. And he cannot achieve that if he doesn't change the contracts. And getting back to my point, in the 1st of February 2016, Mayor Boris Johnson announced the world-leading bus safety program by TfL. And the second point in that was going to change the contracts to include safety incentives. That was never done. Never done. So since that date, 201 people have died from, I would argue, bus-related safety incidents, of which 116 are direct collisions. Now, the second point is after the Croydon tram crash inquiry, and after Leon Daniels, who was the longtime head of surface transport, was terminated for reason of a redundancy in December 2017. There was kind of a change in heart at TfL. And they said, oh, maybe we should talk to me. So I got a nice note from Mike Brown, and I met with Mike Brown and the MD for surface transport in March 2018. And I wrote to them and said, this is what needs to be done. I've sent you the correspondence. And on the 15th of May, 2018, the MD for surface transport wrote back to me and said these things. I think it's helpful if we restate our shared view on three key principles. The first is that accountability and responsibility for bus safety must rest ultimately with TfL. It cannot be devolved to the bus operators individually. The buck stops with us. 2, the second is that our approach to bus safety must mirror the rigor and discipline of our approach to rail safety. And the third is transparency. Since I received that email, 93 people have been killed by buses. If you include the 76 who died from COVID, you're talking over 150 people have been killed directly by not following those principles. When you know the system that you have created, enforced, and managed for 25 years is corrupted by unsafe performance incentives, people can earn profits. TfL executives believe it or not, get bonuses based on achieving these targets. Then there is not only blood on your hands, you are actively participating in an institutionally unsafe system. Now, how do we undo that? How do you clean out the stable? How do you lift the drains and clean the gutters? I thought we were there on the 1st of February 2016. I really did. I thought this was having contracts in place. And then secondly, when I got this note from the MD for surface transport. But my experience with TfL is they mislead, they string you along. It's entirely a system that is incapable of admitting, one, apologizing for its absolute negligence, and two, it cannot clean itself. This really needs precisely what the rail industry had. It needs outside investigation, outside safety standards, outside data collecting and analysis. And if those remain in the hands of TfL, what I strive to do is prevent other families like mine from being ever subjected to that kind of terror and horrific experience that mine did. And I'm one of the lucky ones. I really am. 1,000 people like me per year. I don't know how many actually. What TfL we realize now, after doing the analysis of the data, 25% of the deaths they don't report. So, for example, if you're killed by a bus at a bus station, that doesn't count. If you are hit by a bus and die 31 days after, you don't get count. So, Keith Prince had asked for the data in which they were asking. I analyzed it and found that 1 in 4 bus deaths from collisions or falls were not included in the data. So when the mayor says killed in or on a bus, he's talking about a number that's smaller than the actual number. And TfL publishes that. It says killed in or on a bus year by year. It's wrong. It's not only wrong, it's knowingly wrong. They're actively excluding people killed in or on a bus because it doesn't comply, it doesn't work with the data they want to. This is, to me, is not just morally wrong. It's effectively misconduct in public office. And in a normal situation, people at TfL, and I would argue the minister, would be in front of, perhaps the mayor as the chair, would be in front of an inquiry, not in front of YouTube, picking fights with Donald Trump.
Tom, that is an extremely powerful note to end on. And we just want to thank you for your time coming on the London Brief and educating our listeners on such a crucial topic.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.